25 Kickass and interesting facts about James Bond. 1. For his time as James Bond, Daniel Craig has the privilege of taking any Aston Martin from the factory for the rest of his life. 2. Adam West, Clint Eastwood, and Burt Reynolds were all offered the role of James Bond, and all of them declined, believing that James Bond should always be played by a British actor. 3. Sean Connery wore a toupee in all of his appearances as James Bond as he started balding at the age of 21. 4. George Lazenby wasn't an actor. He got himself a suit, a Rolex and a new haircut, met the producer and made up movies he had been in, and got the role as James Bond. 5. A movie was made in 1967 as a spoof of James Bond. The movie was called OK Connery and starred Sean Connery's brother Neil. 6. While under contract to play James Bond, Pierce Brosnan wasn't allowed to wear a tuxedo in any non-Bond film. 7. James Bond has killed 352 people in 22 films and Pierce Brosnan was the deadliest Bond. He killed 47 people in GoldenEye. 8. Ian Fleming named James Bond after an American bird expert and stated he chose the name because he wanted Bond to be an extremely dull, an interesting man to whom things happened. I thought, by God, James Bond is the dullest name first ever heard. 9. When questioned about his terminal cancer and impending death, musician Warren Zevon stated, "I just want to live long enough to see the next James Bond movie." He achieved this goal and lived long enough to see the ironically named Die Another Day. 10. President John F. Kennedy was a huge James Bond fan. He viewed an early print of From Russia with Love at the White House on November 21, 1963. It was the last film he ever saw as he was killed the very next day in Dallas. 11. Sean Connery, during the filming of the James Bond film Never Say Never Again, was taking martial arts lessons and in the process pissed off his instructor, who in turn broke Connery's wrist. The instructor was Steven Seagal. 12. The producer of the James Bond movies is a woman. She casts Bond, his girls, and decides on the stories. Barbara Broccoli has been in the business for 30 years, leading the most successful cinema franchise. 13. Liam Neeson was offered the role of James Bond in GoldenEye 1995, but turned down the role because he wasn't interested in starring in action movies. 14. James Bond was modeled after a real spy named Wilfred Biffy Dunderdale, MI6, a man in Paris. He was friends with Ian Fleming and several of Dunderdale's stories ended up in Fleming's books. 15. The existence of MI6, the agency with which James Bond works for in the movies, wasn't officially acknowledged by the British government until 1994. 16. The gun made popular by James Bond, the Walther PPK, is the same model that Hitler used to kill himself. 17. Aston Martin factory only uses one robot which applies adhesives to bond aluminum body panels together and is nicknamed James Bonder. 18. There are 2 James Bond movies with the same plot, Never Say Never Again and Thunderball. Sean Connery played James Bond in both films, 18 years apart. 19. All the actors who played James Bond in the past have been 6'1" to 6'2" except Daniel Craig, who is 5'10". 20. James Bond movie You Only Live Twice was written by Roald Dahl. 21. In 1965, the British Royal Corps of Engineers contacted the movie crew from the James Bond film, Thunderball, to inquire about the capabilities of the rebreather used in the film, a prop made from CO2 cartridges and glue. 22. James Bond has been shot at 4,662 times during his career. 23. Ian Fleming, author of the James Bond series, was one of the most important special agents in WW2. His ID was 17F and he was commander of the Special Unit 30 astronomical units. 24. James Bond is a heavy smoker, at one point smoking 70 cigarettes a day. Ian Fleming himself smoked up to 80 cigarettes a day. 25. In Daniel Craig's James Bond films, M's real name is Olivia Mansfield.
Referred to kickassfacts.com.